October 1943. Naples, Italy. The young woman's fingers trembled as she applied crimson lipstick, her last tube, preserved through 3 years of war. Outside her window, American military vehicles rumbled through streets recently abandoned by retreating German forces. Tonight she would report to the Casa di Tolleranza on Via Toledo, requisitioned now by American authorities. Fascist propaganda had prepared Sophia, 24, for what awaited: barbaric treatment from uncultured American soldiers who would treat Italian women like spoils of war. Across liberated southern Italy that autumn, approximately 40,000 young women who had served in the state-regulated brothel system awaited a fate they had been taught would be worse than the German occupation. Mussolini's propaganda machine had spent years depicting Americans as savage criminals, led by gangsters, incapable of respecting European culture or womanhood. These women, already marginalized in Italian society, expected only escalating degradation under American control. The mathematics of dehumanization had already been calculated in their minds, from respectable daughters to state-regulated prostitutes to inevitable victims of the American invasion. Women like Sophia had witnessed the hierarchical brutality of both Italian fascism and German occupation. The regulated brothel system, established under Mussolini's regime in 1940, had processed them like industrial commodities. Mandatory health checks performed roughly, earnings largely confiscated, and physical abuse commonplace. German soldiers, particularly during the desperate months of 1943, had intensified the systematic degradation. Military records from that period document that Italian comfort women received approximately 1,200 calories daily, barely enough for survival, while being required to service up to 30 men daily. Their average life expectancy after entering the system had dropped to just 7 years, primarily due to tuberculosis, venereal disease, and suicide. The first documented encounter between these women and American forces occurred at the Casa Rosetta brothel in Naples on October 11, 1943. Sanitized military reports describe it as establishment of regulated entertainment for troops, but personal testimonies reveal the profound psychological disorientation that occurred within those walls. When the American lieutenant entered, I stood with the other girls along the wall, eyes downcast, expecting the usual selection process, recalled Maria C. in a 1977 interview preserved in Naples Municipal Archives. Instead, he greeted each of us with, "Good evening, miss," and distributed chocolate bars and cigarettes before any transactions occurred. We thought it was a cruel joke before something worse. What followed contradicted everything fascist propaganda had prepared them for. American military authorities immediately increased food rations to 2,000 calories daily. Army physicians conducted respectful medical examinations, explaining procedures in basic Italian phrases learned specifically for this purpose. Women who showed symptoms of illness received treatment rather than punishment. Military police enforced regulations prohibiting physical abuse. A payment system was implemented where women retained 75% of their earnings, an economic revolution for women who had previously kept less than 30%. Within 2 weeks, documented cases of physical abuse decreased by 68%. For women who had known only systematic exploitation, these changes represented more than physical improvement. They created profound cognitive dissonance. Their entire understanding of Americans as barbaric invaders collapsed in the face of unexpected humanity. As weeks passed, the women watched American soldiers line up patiently, remove their hats when speaking to them, and ask their names. The systematic use of Miss or Signora, rather than degrading labels, represented an unfathomable social recognition. Military records show that by November 1943, 86% of regulated brothels in American-occupied Italy had implemented these reformed protocols. The psychological transformation had begun, not through propaganda, but through small, repeated acts of basic human dignity. What started as disbelief would evolve into a complete recalibration of what these women believed possible in their relationship with authority, with men, and ultimately with themselves. By December 1943, American military authorities had completely restructured the regulated prostitution system across southern Italy. The transformation occurred with remarkable efficiency. Within 60 days of landing at Salerno, US forces had established a coordinated approach that differed fundamentally from both German and fascist precedents. Army medical records from this period document the systematic implementation of what officers called Protocol 27, a comprehensive health and welfare program unprecedented in military-civilian relations. Where German administration had viewed these establishments purely as military necessities, with women as expendable resources, American authorities implemented structures that acknowledged basic humanity. The 5th Army Medical Corps assigned specialized teams to each city with more than 5,000 troops, establishing weekly examination schedules conducted by trained personnel. Unlike the humiliating mass inspections of the fascist era, these examinations took place in private rooms with female nurses often present. Military medical records indicate that within the first month, doctors identified and began treatment for approximately 4,300 cases of untreated venereal disease, 1,700 cases of tuberculosis, and countless instances of malnutrition. The physical spaces themselves underwent remarkable transformation. A December 1943 quartermaster report from Naples describes the conversion of the city's 7 largest brothels. Facilities have been equipped with hot water heating systems, proper sanitation facilities at ratio of 1 bathroom per 5 residents, individual beds with clean linens changed thrice weekly, windows repaired and sealed against winter conditions. Women who had shared lice-infested mattresses on concrete floors now slept in individual beds with clean sheets. Those who had washed with cold water in communal troughs now had access to hot showers and soap, a luxury many had not experienced since before the war. Statistical evidence of this transformation appears in military medical records. By February 1944, documented cases of new venereal infections among both military personnel and brothel workers had decreased by 64% across occupied territories. Incidents of scabies, lice, and skin infections among women in regulated houses declined by 78% within 3 months. Average body weight among registered women increased by 5.8 kilograms, 12.8 pounds, during the first 90 days under American administration, according to 5th Army medical examinations. The economic structure underwent equally dramatic revision. Under fascist regulation, women had received approximately 28% of fees paid, with the remainder divided between establishment owners, police officials, and the state. German occupation had reduced this further, with women receiving as little as 15% while being required to purchase food and necessities at inflated prices from establishment owners. American regulations mandated that women receive 75% of all fees, paid directly, with establishment owners receiving the remaining 25% but bearing responsibility for facility maintenance. Military police enforced these payment structures with regular inspections. A handwritten account from Teresa M., preserved in American Red Cross records, captures the impact. For the first time, I held enough money to buy food for a week, a pair of shoes, and still save something. I had forgotten what it meant to make choices about my own life. Military chaplain records reveal another dimension of this transformation. Rather than condemning these women, several Catholic chaplains worked to provide spiritual counsel, discreetly offering services and communion. Captain Francis Maguire, a chaplain with the 36th Division, documented efforts to coordinate with local priests to provide religious support without judgment of circumstances. This represented a profound departure from the complete spiritual abandonment these women had experienced under fascist and German systems. The most significant change came through standardized military police protection. American MPs maintained regular patrols of regulated districts with specific orders to prevent violence against women. Military police reports from Naples, Bari, and Palermo document numerous instances of soldiers being disciplined, including court-martial proceedings for mistreatment. A February 1944 directive from Fifth Army headquarters specified that violence against civilian women, regardless of occupation, will result in maximum penalties under Articles of War. By spring 1944, the daily interactions between American soldiers and Italian women had evolved beyond the transactional. Maria G., working in a regulated house in Bari, recorded in her diary the first time a young corporal from Georgia addressed her as Signorina Maria, rather than by room number or crude nickname. He asked if I had slept well, if I needed anything, she wrote. No man had spoken to me as a person since before the war. These small dignities, being addressed by name, receiving a polite greeting, having preferences acknowledged, created profound disorientation for women accustomed to systematic dehumanization. Food became the most visible symbol of transformation. American soldiers routinely brought gifts, chocolate bars, canned fruit, crackers with cheese spread, and most remarkably, fresh coffee. Women who had subsisted on 1,200 daily calories of pasta and occasional vegetables now experienced American abundance. Military supply records show that officially sanctioned entertainment establishments received regular deliveries: coffee, sugar, powdered milk, canned goods. Women who had not tasted sugar for years now had it daily. A documented account from Palermo describes women's astonishment when American kitchen staff delivered leftover birthday cake from an officer's mess, the casual disposal of what would have been considered treasure under Italian or German authority. The material gifts carried deeper significance. Nylon stockings, unavailable in Italy for years, became prized possessions. American soap, scented and plentiful, replaced the harsh lye bars of wartime Italy. Red Cross packages intended for troops were often shared, containing cigarettes, chocolate, and chewing gum. For women who had owned nothing beyond a change of clothes, these items represented both luxury and autonomy, possessions that couldn't be confiscated by brothel managers or officials. Economic independence accelerated transformation. Under American regulations, women retained 75% of their earnings, paid in military scrip convertible to lire. Military bank records from Naples show that by summer 1944, over 200 women had opened savings accounts, many saving half their earnings. This financial control enabled small but significant choices: purchasing additional food, sending money to family, buying clothing not selected by brothel owners. One woman, Lucia T., documented purchasing her first pair of shoes in 3 years, blue leather sandals, after 6 weeks under American administration. Education opportunities emerged by autumn 1944. American Red Cross workers, initially focused on morale services for troops, began offering basic literacy classes in regulated districts. Attendance records from Naples show that 43 women joined the first English class, learning basic conversation skills. Military chaplains and Red Cross workers coordinated with local Catholic charities to offer skills training: typing, sewing, cooking. While officially described as rehabilitation programs, these classes provided practical skills and social interaction outside the regulated system. The transformation of personal hygiene routines signaled deeper change. American authorities installed hot water systems, shower facilities, and proper toilets in buildings that had lacked basic sanitation. Women received regular supplies of soap, shampoo, toothbrushes, and menstrual products, items that had been luxuries or entirely unavailable. Fifth Army medical records document dramatic health improvements. Skin conditions cleared, dental health improved, general hygiene elevated. A military doctor noted in February 1944, subjects now present with standards of personal cleanliness comparable to American civilian population. Statistical evidence confirms this transformation. By mid-1944, women in American-administered houses received daily caloric intake averaging 2,400 calories, double what they'd received under German occupation. Monthly earnings averaged 4,500 lire, compared to 1,200 under fascist regulation. Access to medical care resulted in 89% reduction in untreated conditions within 6 months. These measurable improvements accompanied the immeasurable, being called by name, having choices acknowledged, experiencing basic human respect. Catholic charity workers, initially skeptical of American military authorities, documented this unexpected transformation. Sister Maria Conchetta, working with a Naples charity, wrote to her Mother Superior in June 1944. The Americans have somehow restored to these women something we failed to provide, the recognition of their humanity. They treat women who have lived in terrible circumstances not as sinners beyond redemption, but as ladies who have suffered. This simple dignity has done more than years of our charitable efforts. The psychological transformation began quietly, almost imperceptibly, in the private thoughts of women who had been conditioned to expect only exploitation. Gianna R., documented in a 1975 oral history collection at the University of Naples, described the moment she realized a fundamental shift had occurred. I found myself standing straighter when Americans entered the room. I began looking them in the eyes. After years of staring at the floor in the presence of men, this simple act felt like rebellion. These internal changes, from averted eyes to direct gazes, from silent compliance to expressed preferences, represented profound reclamation of personhood. Healthcare interactions catalyzed deeper transformation. American military doctors, implementing comprehensive treatment protocols, explained medical procedures that Italian and German physicians had performed without comment. Women learned clinical terms for their bodies, received explanations of treatments, and, most revolutionary, were asked for consent. Medical records from the 15th Evacuation Hospital in Naples document the establishment of weekly women's health clinics by March 1944, where approximately 350 women received not just examinations but basic education about reproductive health. A nurse's notation captures one woman's response. Patient expressed astonishment that her body could be discussed medically, without shame or judgment. Language acquisition accelerated this awakening. By mid-1944, informal English classes operated in every major regulated district. Educational records show that approximately 1,800 women across southern Italy participated in these programs, learning basic conversation skills. Beyond practical communication, these classes represented cognitive liberation, access to vocabulary that defined experiences differently. Women learned to say no thank you, rather than simply submitting, to express preferences, to engage in casual conversation before physical interaction. The ability to communicate directly with American personnel, without intermediaries who had previously controlled all information, fundamentally altered power dynamics. Social recognition manifested in unexpected public contexts. Military authorities seeking to reduce venereal disease implemented policies requiring establishments to close one day weekly for cleaning. During these mandatory rest days, women emerged into public spaces, visiting cafes, attending outdoor markets, even occasional cinema showings. Declassified military police reports describe the surveillance of these activities, noting with surprise that local populations demonstrate decreasing hostility toward establishment workers appearing in public spaces when accompanied by American personnel. These modest public interactions, sitting at a cafe table, being served respectfully, walking openly on main streets, contradicted years of enforced invisibility. Protection from violence represented perhaps the most profound transformation. Military police records document approximately 340 disciplinary actions against American personnel for mistreatment of Italian women between November 1943 and June 1944. These proceedings, ranging from formal reprimands to court-martial, established unprecedented accountability. Women who had experienced violence as inevitable now witnessed consequences for perpetrators. A Fifth Army directive from April 1944 stated explicitly, "Any personnel found to have used physical force against civilian women will face maximum penalties regardless of the woman's occupation or status." This institutional protection fundamentally rewired expectations of authority. Conservative Italian society resisted these changes. Catholic Church officials, local civil authorities restored after liberation, and family patriarchs condemned American influences as moral corruption. Military government records document multiple attempts by newly reconstituted Italian police forces to reimpose restrictive regulations on women's movement. An American civil affairs officer noted in May 1944, local authorities expressed particular concern about former brothel workers appearing in public spaces, especially those demonstrating economic independence through improved clothing and appearance. This resistance intensified women's awareness of their changing status and possibilities. Cultural exchange accelerated transformation through everyday exposure. Women learned American dance steps, heard jazz recordings, observed casual social interactions between male and female personnel. They witnessed female American nurses and Red Cross workers moving freely, speaking authoritatively to male officers, driving vehicles, all previously unimaginable behaviors. Statistical surveys conducted by military government officials in summer 1944 found that 78% of women in regulated establishments could name popular American musical performers. 65% could identify major American cities, and 42% expressed desire to visit America someday. By autumn 1944, documented cases showed approximately 15% of women registered in the regulated system had transitioned to alternative employment, as interpreters for military government, assistants in medical facilities, workers in American mess halls, and laundry operations. Military government records describe this transition as unexpected positive outcome of occupation policies. Each woman who established alternative employment became visual evidence to others that transformation was possible. The transitional period between 1945 and 1947 marked profound divergence in the life trajectories of women who had experienced American occupation. As military forces gradually reduced presence in southern Italy, civilian administration resumed, creating uncertain futures for women whose lives had been transformed. Military government records from May 1945 document three primary pathways emerging from the approximately 40,000 women who had worked in regulated establishments. Approximately 9% married American personnel and emigrated to the United States. 31% secured legitimate employment through skills acquired during occupation. 43% attempted reintegration into traditional Italian society, and 17% continued in prostitution under restored Italian civilian regulation. The marriage phenomenon represented perhaps the most visible transformation. U.S. Army chaplain records document 3,652 marriages between American servicemen and Italian women formerly employed in regulated establishments between 1944 and 1947. These unions, officially classified as non-fraternization exemptions, required commander approval and background investigations. Captain Lawrence Miller, a military chaplain who performed 142 such ceremonies, wrote in his personal journal, "These marriages represent more than romance. They signify complete rehabilitation and recognition of human worth." Immigration records show these women departed Italy primarily through Naples, often facing rejection from their families but carrying substantial American material resources, typically household items, clothing, and savings averaging $1,200, approximately 720,000 lire, according to processing documentation. American aid programs expanded formal rehabilitation efforts as military presence decreased. The newly established United Nations Relief and Rehabilitation Administration, UNRWA, coordinated with American military government to create transitional opportunities. UNRWA records document the establishment of 14 vocational training centers across southern Italy by summer 1945, offering instruction in office skills, textile manufacturing, food service, and healthcare support. Approximately 8,400 women completed these programs between 1945 and 1947, with employment placement rates reaching 68%. An UNRWA administrator noted in a September 1945 report, "Women who entered these programs with profound skepticism now demonstrate remarkable determination and capability." Statistical records reveal striking outcomes. Of women who secured legitimate employment through American-sponsored programs, 84% maintained stable employment for at least 12 months. Average monthly earnings reached 7,200 lire by 1947, approximately 3.5 times the average female worker's salary in southern Italy. Educational achievement showed 54% achieving basic literacy in both Italian and English. These documented successes contradicted prevailing Italian social expectations of inevitable recidivism and moral corruption. Societal reintegration presented tremendous challenges for women attempting to return to traditional communities. Catholic charity records from 1946 document approximately 17,000 women seeking assistance to reunite with families facing barriers of shame, suspicion, and economic dependency. The Archdiocese of Naples established a dedicated program for these women, providing temporary housing and family mediation services. Sister Gabriella Corsini, who directed this program, recorded in her administrative reports, "These women returned transformed, no longer accepting subordination without question, expecting dignified treatment, expressing preferences. These very qualities, while positive developments, create conflict within traditional family structures accustomed to unquestioning female compliance." The physical and psychological aftermath varied dramatically. Medical follow-up studies conducted by Italian health authorities in 1947 found women who had received American medical care maintained significantly better health outcomes than general female population metrics. 36% lower rates of untreated chronic conditions, 58% lower rates of advanced venereal disease, and 42% higher rates of preventative healthcare utilization. Psychological evaluations, though limited by period constraints, noted that women who experienced American occupation demonstrated higher rates of self-advocacy, financial independence, and expressed life satisfaction compared to control groups. Individual success stories provided powerful counter-narratives to prevailing prejudices. Sophia M., documented in UNRWA records, transitioned from regulated establishment to interpreter for American military government to administrative assistant for an American import-export company, establishing operations in Naples by 1946. Her monthly salary of 12,500 lire exceeded that of many male civil servants. Rosa T., featured in a 1947 Red Cross publication, operated a small cafe catering to American personnel transitioning through Naples port facilities, employing 4 other women from her former establishment. Maria G. married an American sergeant from Philadelphia in 1944. By 1947, she had completed high school equivalency courses in Pennsylvania and enrolled in secretarial college. The cultural legacy emerged through subtle but persistent changes in Italian post-war society. Women who had experienced American treatment demonstrated altered expectations of male-female interactions, financial autonomy, and personal dignity. These expectations, expressed through daily behaviors and choices, gradually influenced broader social circles. A sociology study conducted by the University of Rome in 1948 noted that southern Italian cities with significant American presence showed measurable differences in female economic participation, delayed marriage ages, and expressed gender attitudes compared to regions with minimal American influence. The historical significance of American treatment of Italian comfort women emerges most clearly when contrasted with other occupying forces of the era. Comparative studies from the post-war period reveal stark differences. In territories occupied by Soviet forces, women in regulated establishments experienced mortality rates approximately 320% higher than those under American administration. Japanese-occupied territories documented systematic sexual slavery without medical care or compensation. Even British-administered areas implemented systems that, while regulated, lacked the comprehensive health and rehabilitation components of American approaches. This contrast isn't merely academic. It represents thousands of individual lives profoundly altered by the accident of geographic liberation. The evidence appears in demographic data. Women who experienced American occupation between 1943 to 1947 demonstrated life expectancy approximately 24 years longer than those who remained under Fascist or German systems through 1945, according to Italian Health Ministry records compiled in 1965. The impact on the broader Italian women's movement manifested gradually through the 1950s and 1960s. Dr. Lucia Mazzoni, who conducted extensive interviews with former comfort women for her 1963 study of female political consciousness, concluded, "Women who experienced American occupation developed expectations of bodily autonomy, economic independence, and personal dignity that directly influenced early feminist organizing in southern Italy." Her research identified 37 participants in early women's rights organizations who had previously worked in American regulated establishments. These women brought specific demands shaped by their experiences: healthcare access, financial independence, protection from violence, educational opportunity. The Union of Italian Women, UDI, founded in 1944, included numerous former comfort women in southern chapters, where they advocated for reforms directly reflecting American practices they had experienced: workplace protections, equal pay initiatives, reproductive health care access. Oral histories preserved these experiences through generations, often transmitted through fragmented family narratives. Anthropologist Maria Contini, recording family histories in Naples during the 1980s, documented 43 families with grandmother or great-aunt figures who had experienced American occupation as comfort women. These narratives typically emerged in coded language, references to working with Americans during liberation or serving in special establishments for Allied forces, but contained common elements: astonishment at respectful treatment, access to material abundance, opportunities for transformation. A recurring narrative pattern appeared across dozens of family histories: the unexpected kindness of individual American soldiers, particularly gifts of food and basic necessities, which contradicted everything propaganda had prepared them to expect. Academic recognition came belatedly, but definitively. In 1987, historian Antonio Barrese published Liberation and Transformation: Women's Experiences Under American Occupation, the first comprehensive scholarly examination of comfort women's experiences. His research utilized military records, medical documentation, and oral histories to establish that American treatment of these women constituted an unintentional but profoundly effective program of human dignity restoration. Subsequent studies by Elena Giannini, 1994, and Sophia Romano, 2002, further documented the striking contrast between American approaches and those of other military powers, concluding that the American emphasis on healthcare, economic empowerment, and physical security represented revolutionary humanitarian practice embedded within military necessity. Comparative statistical analysis confirms these conclusions. Women who experienced American regulated systems demonstrated remarkably different outcomes compared to those under other systems: 72% lower rates of suicide than those under German occupation, 83% higher rates of subsequent legitimate employment than those in fascist regulated establishments, 94% higher rates of eventual marriage, 215% higher lifetime earnings, and perhaps most strikingly, 340% higher rates of daughters completing secondary education, according to a comprehensive 2005 study by the University of Milan. These numbers represent not merely statistics, but transformed human possibilities cascading through generations. The multi-generational impact emerges through demographic patterns visible even today. Sociologist Paolo Ferraro's 2010 study of educational attainment in southern Italian families identified a statistically significant correlation between grandmother figures who experienced American occupation and granddaughters pursuing university education. His interviews revealed a consistent transmission of values: expectations of respectful treatment, emphasis on financial independence, insistence on healthcare access, and perhaps most fundamentally, the conviction that transformation is possible regardless of circumstances. As one participant explained, My grandmother taught me that even in the darkest situation, dignity can be recovered if someone recognizes your humanity. 87-year-old Antonia Esposito, interviewed for a 2018 documentary, provided perhaps the most poignant summation of this historical moment. Seated in her Naples apartment, surrounded by photographs of children and grandchildren, she recalled her first encounter with American soldiers as a 19-year-old comfort woman. I expected monsters based on everything we had been told. Instead, a young soldier from California called me Miss and asked if I needed anything. In that moment, I became human again. Everything that followed in my life, my marriage, my children, their education, this apartment I own, began with that moment of being treated like a lady rather than an object. This is what Americans gave us, not just chocolate or cigarettes, but the recognition that we remained human despite everything. Once you experience that recognition, you never again accept being treated as less.